On a quiet road outside the city, something waits in the rain. A small doll, lying alone by the side of the road. Cold, silent, forgotten. Most people would simply drive past it. But sometimes, curiosity is stronger than caution. And the moment someone bends down to pick it up, something else begins to follow them home. Tonight's story is about a man who made that mistake. Because some things are not meant to be found. And some dolls are waiting for someone new to take their place. Chapter 1. The Doll by the Road. That night, the rain would not stop. It poured down endlessly, drumming against the windshield of Min's car as he drove along the empty road on the outskirts of the city. The streetlights were few and far between, leaving long stretches of darkness where the only light came from his headlights slicing through the heavy rain. It was already past midnight. Min had just finished a late shift at work, and all he wanted was to get home, take a hot shower, and collapse into bed. The road he was driving on was usually quiet, but tonight it felt eerily silent, as if the world itself had fallen asleep. The rain grew heavier. Water splashed beneath the tires as the car moved through puddles forming along the cracked asphalt. Then suddenly, Min slammed on the brakes. The headlights illuminated something lying near the side of the road. A doll. It was small, no bigger than a child's arm, lying half submerged in a shallow puddle. Its blonde hair was tangled and soaked with rain, clinging to its pale plastic face. The red dress it wore looked old and torn, the fabric darkened by mud and water. Min frowned. What the? He leaned forward slightly, staring through the windshield. The doll seemed strangely out of place here. There were no houses nearby, no playgrounds, no sidewalks where a child might have dropped it. Just the empty road. And the rain. After a moment, Min sighed and turned off the engine. He stepped out of the car, the cold wind instantly biting through his jacket. Rain soaked his hair as he walked toward the doll. Some kid must have lost it, he muttered. He crouched down and picked it up. The moment his fingers touched the doll, he paused. It was warm. Not the cold stiffness of plastic that had been lying in the rain. Warm, almost like it had just been held in someone's hands. Min slowly looked around. The road stretched empty in both directions. No cars. No houses. No people. Only the sound of rain falling endlessly in the darkness. A strange uneasiness crept into his chest. He glanced back down at the doll. Its glassy black eyes reflected the faint glow of the car's headlights. For a brief second, Min felt as though the doll was staring directly at him. Watching. He shook his head and let out a small laugh. Guess I'm just tired. Still, something about the doll made him hesitate. But the rain was getting heavier, and standing out here felt more uncomfortable with every passing second. Min carried the doll back to the car and placed it on the back seat. As he started the engine again, the headlights flickered slightly in the rain. For a moment, the interior of the car grew dim. And in that brief flash of darkness, Min thought he saw the doll's head tilt slightly. When the lights returned to normal, the doll was exactly where he had left it, sitting quietly on the back seat, staring forward. Min forced a chuckle. Yeah, I definitely need some sleep. He drove away, disappearing into the rain-soaked night. Behind him, the empty road fell silent once again. But the doll remained in the car. And that was the first mistake. Chapter 2. The Sound in the Night. Min arrived home just after midnight. The rain had weakened slightly by the time he parked his car in front of the small house at the end of the alley. The neighborhood was quiet, as it always was at that hour. Most of the houses were dark, their windows black and silent. He grabbed his bag from the passenger seat and glanced once at the back seat. The doll was still there, sitting upright. Its small plastic face was faintly illuminated by the dim interior light of the car. For some reason, Min hesitated before picking it up. Up close, the doll looked older than he had first thought. Its red dress was faded, and the seams were worn as if it had been handled many times over the years. One of its shoes was missing, and its tangled blonde hair stuck together in damp strands. Still warm. That strange warmth again. Min frowned but shook off the uneasy feeling. Probably just my imagination. He carried the doll inside. The house was small but comfortable, just a living room, a kitchen, and a bedroom. Min placed the doll on a wooden chair near the sofa. Under the yellow light of the ceiling lamp, the doll's glass eyes reflected tiny points of light. For a moment, it almost looked alive. Min quickly turned away. After taking a shower and changing clothes, he walked past the living room again on his way to bed. The doll was still sitting on the chair. Exactly where he left it. Good, he muttered to himself with a tired smile. Within minutes, he fell asleep. Hours passed. The house remained completely silent. Then suddenly, click. Min's eyes opened. The room was dark. For a moment he lay still, listening. Maybe it was just the house settling. Old houses often made noises at night. Then he heard it again. Click. This time it sounded clearer. Something hard tapping against the wooden floor. Min sat up slowly. His heart began to beat faster. Probably a rat, he whispered. He slid out of bed and walked toward the bedroom door. The hallway outside was pitch black. He reached for the light switch. Click. The hallway lights flickered on. Everything looked normal. Min walked into the living room. The chair near the sofa stood under the yellow light. Empty. The doll was gone. A cold chill crept down his spine. That's not funny. He searched the living room. Nothing. Kitchen. Nothing. Bathroom. Nothing. Min swallowed hard. There's no way. He slowly turned back toward his bedroom. The door was open, and something was sitting in the middle of his bed. Min froze. The doll. It sat upright on the blanket, facing the doorway, its glass eyes staring directly at him, as if it had been waiting for him to return.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 3. The Old Neighbor. Min didn't sleep for the rest of the night. He sat on the edge of his bed, staring at the doll sitting in the middle of the blanket. The house was silent again, but the silence now felt different, heavy, almost suffocating. Every time he blinked, he felt uneasy, as if the doll might move the moment he looked away. But it never did. It simply sat there, perfectly still. When the first pale light of morning slipped through the window, Min finally grabbed the doll and left the house. He told himself he needed fresh air, and maybe a little reassurance that he wasn't losing his mind. At the end of the alley lived Mrs. Han. She was an elderly woman who had lived in the neighborhood longer than anyone could remember. People often said she knew every story, every rumor, and every strange event that had ever happened around the area. If anyone knew something about the doll, it would be her. Min knocked on the door. After a moment, the door creaked open. Mrs. Han stood there in a faded gray sweater, her thin silver hair tied loosely behind her head. Her sharp eyes studied Min for a moment. Yes? Sorry to bother you so early, Min said, but I wanted to ask about something. He lifted the doll slightly. The moment Mrs. Han saw it, her expression changed. Her eyes widened. Her face slowly drained of color. Where did you get that? Min blinked in surprise. On the road outside the city. It was lying in the rain last night. The old woman immediately stepped back. Her voice dropped to a whisper. You should not have touched it. Min frowned. It's just a doll. Mrs. Han shook her head slowly. No. Her eyes never left the doll. That thing is not just a doll. A cold breeze passed through the open doorway. Min felt an uncomfortable shiver run through him. What do you mean? Mrs. Han remained silent for a few seconds, as if deciding whether she should speak at all. Finally, she sighed. 3 years ago, she said quietly, a little girl disappeared near that same road. Min felt his grip tighten slightly around the doll. No one ever found her. The old woman pointed at the doll with a trembling finger. But people say, she always carried a doll wearing a red dress. Min slowly looked down. The faded red dress. The tangled blonde hair. The glassy black eyes. His stomach suddenly felt very cold. Mrs. Han's voice became even quieter. And do you know what happened to the people who found that doll afterward? Min swallowed. What? The old woman's gaze lifted to meet his. They didn't keep it for long. Because every single one of them, her voice trembled, died. Chapter 4. It came back. Min tried to laugh after leaving Mrs. Han's house. The old woman's story echoed in his mind, but he kept telling himself it was nothing more than superstition. Old neighborhoods always had stories like that, ghost tales passed from one generation to the next. Still, the uneasy feeling wouldn't go away. The doll rested in his hand as he walked back toward his house. It felt heavier now. Or maybe that was just his imagination. When he stepped inside, the house felt strangely colder than usual. The quiet rooms seemed to hold their breath as if something inside them was waiting. Min placed the doll on the table and stared at it. "All right," he muttered. "That's enough." If the doll was really causing all this anxiety, the easiest solution was simple. He would get rid of it. For good. That evening, Min drove to the far edge of the city where an old dumping ground stood beyond a line of rusted fences and broken streetlights. The place smelled of wet metal and rotting trash. Perfect. No one would come here. He stepped out of the car, carrying the doll by one arm. The wind howled softly through the piles of garbage scattered across the ground. Min walked to a large metal container and lifted the lid. Inside was a mountain of trash bags and broken objects. Without hesitating, he threw the doll inside. It landed with a dull plastic sound and disappeared beneath the garbage. Min slammed the lid shut. "There," he said with relief. Problem solved. The drive home felt lighter. For the first time since the night before, Min began to relax. Maybe Mrs. Han's warning had just gotten into his head. Maybe the strange things he thought he saw were just exhaustion from work. By the time he parked outside his house, the rain had stopped completely. The night air was quiet. Normal. He stepped inside and turned on the lights. The living room looked exactly as it always did. The sofa. The wooden chair. The small table near the wall. Min kicked off his shoes and walked further into the room. Then he stopped. His heart skipped a beat. Slowly, very slowly, his eyes moved toward the wooden chair. Something was sitting there. Small. Still. Wearing a faded red dress. The doll. Exactly the same. Dry. Clean. Its glass eyes reflected the yellow light of the ceiling lamp as it stared directly toward the doorway. Min felt his throat tighten. That's impossible. He stepped closer. The doll did not move. But somehow the room felt colder with every step he took. Min's mind raced. He had thrown it away. He had watched it fall into the trash. He had closed the lid. And yet, here it was, waiting in his house, as if it had never left. Behind him, the front door slowly creaked shut on its own. And the silence inside the house grew heavier than ever.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 5. The Child's Laughter. Min didn't sleep that night. He couldn't. The doll sat on the wooden chair in the living room, exactly where he had found it when he returned home. No matter how much he tried to convince himself there had to be a logical explanation. Nothing made sense. He had thrown it away. Miles from his house. Yet somehow it had returned. Now the doll sat there silently, its glass eyes reflecting the dim yellow light of the room. Watching. Min dragged a chair across the floor and placed it directly in front of the doll. The scraping sound echoed loudly in the quiet house. "All right," he said under his breath. "If you're going to do something, do it." Of course, nothing happened. The doll remained completely still. Minutes passed. Then hours. The ticking of the clock on the wall became painfully loud. 1:32 a.m. 2:11 a.m. 2:47 a.m. Min rubbed his tired eyes but forced himself to stay awake. He was determined not to let the doll out of his sight. If it moved, he would see it. If it did anything strange, he would know. Time continued to crawl forward. 3:03 a.m. The house was silent. The air felt thick and strangely cold. Min leaned back slightly in his chair, exhaustion creeping into his bones. Then suddenly, a sound. Soft. High. A child's giggle. Min froze. The sound had come from somewhere behind him. His heart immediately began pounding against his ribs. Slowly, he turned his head. The hallway behind him was empty. Dark. Completely silent. "Hello?" Min called out, his voice barely above a whisper. No answer. He stood up slowly, every nerve in his body tense. The giggle came again. Closer this time. A light, playful laugh. Like a small child trying to hide during a game. Min spun around toward the living room. The doll was still on the chair. But something was different. Its head had tilted slightly to the side. Min was certain it hadn't been like that before. He stared at it. The doll's black eyes seemed darker now, reflecting almost no light at all. Then a tiny whisper drifted through the air. So soft he almost thought he imagined it. "Play with me." Min's blood turned cold. The voice was not coming from the hallway. It was coming from the chair. From the doll. Before he could move, the clock on the wall clicked loudly. 3:17 a.m. And somewhere inside the house, small footsteps began to run across the floor. Chapter 6. The Dream. Min didn't remember falling asleep. One moment he was sitting in the chair across from the doll, listening to the echo of those tiny footsteps somewhere inside the house. The next moment, he was standing in the rain. Cold drops fell endlessly from the dark sky above him. The road stretched out in front of him, empty and glistening under a faint, flickering streetlight. It took a few seconds for Min to realize where he was. The same road. The place where he had first found the doll. But something about it felt wrong. The air was heavier. The silence was deeper. Even the rain sounded strange, as if each drop was hitting the ground far too loudly. Min looked around. There were no cars. No houses. Only darkness and rain. Then he heard something behind him. A soft splash. Like someone stepping into a puddle. Min slowly turned around. A small figure stood in the middle of the road. A little girl. She looked no older than 6. Her long black hair was soaked with rain, strands sticking to her pale face. She wore a small white dress that clung to her thin body, darkened by the water. But what truly froze Min in place were her eyes. They were completely black. No white. No color. Just endless darkness. The girl stared at him silently. Min tried to speak. "Are you lost?" The girl didn't answer. Instead, she took one slow step toward him. The sound of her bare feet splashing in the water echoed strangely across the empty road. Another step. Then another. Min felt his chest tighten. Something deep inside him whispered that he should run. But his feet refused to move. Finally, the girl stopped only a few feet away. Her small head tilted slightly. Then she spoke. Her voice was soft, almost gentle. "Have you seen my doll?" The words sent a cold wave through Min's body. He opened his mouth to answer, but no sound came out. The girl continued staring at him, waiting. Rainwater streamed down her face like tears. "Have you seen it?" Her voice sounded different now. Lower. Hollow. Min shook his head. I don't know." For a moment the girl said nothing. Then slowly, her lips curled into a small smile. A smile that did not belong on a child's face. "That's okay." She lifted one small hand and pointed behind him. "Because you found it." Min felt something suddenly press down on his chest. Heavy. Cold. He looked down. The doll was lying on his chest, its glass eyes staring directly into his. And then, Min woke up. He gasped for air, his body jerking upright in bed. The room was dark. His heart pounded violently. For several seconds he sat there, breathing heavily. Then slowly, he looked down. Something was resting on his chest. Small. Light. Wearing a faded red dress. The doll.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 7. The Old Photograph. Min barely slept after the nightmare. Even after waking up and throwing the doll back onto the chair in the living room, the image of the little girl in the rain refused to leave his mind. Her black eyes, her quiet voice, the way she had asked about the doll. "Have you seen my doll?" The words echoed in his head over and over again. By morning, Min had made a decision. If the story Mrs. Han told him was true, then there had to be some record of it somewhere. A missing child, especially a young one, wouldn't simply disappear without leaving behind news reports, police investigations, or old articles. So after grabbing a quick cup of coffee, Min headed into town. The public library stood near the center of the city, an old building filled with dusty shelves and yellowed newspapers that went back decades. It wasn't a place many people visited anymore, which made it perfect. Min sat at one of the old computers and began searching through archived local news reports from 3 years ago. At first, nothing appeared. But after nearly an hour of digging through old articles, he finally found something. A small headline, buried in the corner of a newspaper page. 6-year-old girl missing near Northern Highway. Min clicked the article. A photograph slowly appeared on the screen. The moment he saw it, his stomach dropped. The girl in the picture looked exactly like the child from his dream. Long dark hair. Small face. A quiet, almost shy smile. Below the photograph was a name. Lin Tran, age 6. According to the report, Lin had disappeared one rainy evening while walking home with her mother. They had been crossing a quiet road outside the city when the girl suddenly ran ahead. By the time her mother caught up, Lin was gone. The police searched the entire area for weeks. Dogs, helicopters, search teams. But they never found the girl. No body. No witnesses. No clues. Just gone. Min leaned back slowly in his chair. Something about the article made his chest tighten. Then he noticed something else in the photograph. Something he hadn't seen at first. In the girl's small arms, she was holding a doll. A doll wearing a faded red dress. The same tangled blonde hair. The same glassy black eyes. Min felt a cold wave run through his entire body. It was the same doll. The exact same one sitting in his house right now. His fingers trembled slightly as he scrolled down the article. The final line of the report read, "Authorities believe the child may have wandered into the forest area near the road. Her favorite toy, a red-dressed doll, was never recovered." Min stared at the screen. Never recovered. But somehow, 3 years later, he had found it lying beside that same road. Outside the library window, dark clouds slowly began to gather again. And somewhere far away, thunder rolled quietly across the sky. Chapter 8. The Handprints on the Wall. When Min returned home from the library, the sky had already turned gray. Heavy clouds hung low over the neighborhood, making the afternoon feel darker than it should have been. A distant rumble of thunder echoed somewhere beyond the city. Min unlocked his front door and stepped inside. The house was silent. Too silent. He stood there for a moment, listening carefully. Ever since the strange events of the past few nights, silence had begun to feel more unsettling than noise. "Hello?" he called out quietly. No answer. He closed the door behind him and walked into the living room. The wooden chair near the sofa was still there. And sitting on it, the doll. Exactly where he had left it that morning. Its small plastic body leaned slightly forward, its tangled blonde hair casting thin shadows across its pale face. The faded red dress looked darker under the dim light coming from the window. For a moment, Min simply stood there, watching it, waiting for it to move. But it didn't. After a while, he let out a slow breath. "Maybe I'm losing my mind," he muttered. He placed his keys on the table and walked into the kitchen to pour himself a glass of water. The sound of running water filled the room. For the first time all day, things felt almost normal. But when he returned to the living room, something made him stop in the doorway. The air felt colder. Much colder. Min slowly looked around the room. Everything seemed the same at first. The sofa. The chair. The doll. Then he noticed the wall. Right beside the chair, dark marks had appeared on the pale paint. Small marks. At first, Min thought they were stains or smudges. But when he stepped closer, His stomach tightened. They were handprints. Tiny handprints. The size of a small child's hands. Dozens of them. They began near the floor, messy and uneven, as if someone had pressed wet hands against the wall. The prints continued upward in a crooked line, climbing higher and higher across the surface. Like something had been dragging itself up the wall. Min felt his breathing grow shallow. Slowly, he followed the trail with his eyes. The handprints stopped directly above the wooden chair. Right above the doll. He looked down. The doll had not moved. But now its head seemed slightly tilted upward. As if it were looking at the wall. Or perhaps, at the place where the small hands had stopped. Suddenly, tap. A small sound echoed from somewhere behind Min. He turned quickly. Nothing. Then another sound. Tap, tap, tap. It was faint, but unmistakable. Small footsteps, running lightly across the ceiling above him. Min's blood ran cold, because the room above the living room was empty.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 9. Don't Look Away. Min didn't move for a long time. The sound of the footsteps above him had stopped as suddenly as it began, leaving the house in complete silence once again. But now the silence felt heavier. Oppressive. Like something inside the walls was waiting. Min slowly turned back toward the living room. The doll was still sitting on the wooden chair. Exactly where it had been. Its glassy black eyes stared forward without blinking, reflecting the pale light from the window. For several seconds, Min simply stood there, watching it. Something was wrong. He couldn't explain how he knew, but the feeling in his chest told him something had changed. Then he noticed it. The doll's position. Its body was facing the same direction as before, but its head was turned slightly toward the hallway. Min frowned. I don't remember it looking that way. He stepped closer. The handprints on the wall beside the chair looked darker now, as if the paint had absorbed something wet. Tiny fingers. Small palms. Dozens of them. Min felt a chill creep across his skin. Suddenly, a thought crossed his mind. A terrible thought. What if the doll didn't move when he wasn't in the room? What if it moved when he simply wasn't looking at it? The idea made his stomach twist. He pulled another chair across the floor and sat directly in front of the doll again. Just like the night before. All right, he whispered. Let's test that. Min leaned forward, his eyes locked on the doll's face. The seconds passed slowly. Nothing happened. The doll remained completely still. Minutes went by. The quiet ticking of the clock echoed through the room. Min's eyes began to burn from staring. But he refused to blink. Then, he heard something behind him. A faint scraping sound. Like fingers dragging slowly across wood. Min's heart began pounding. The sound came from the hallway again. But this time it was closer. Much closer. Scrrrr. Something was crawling. Very slowly. Across the floor. Min swallowed hard but kept his eyes fixed on the doll. No, he whispered to himself. I'm not looking away. The scraping sound continued. Closer. Closer. Now it sounded like it was directly behind his chair. He could almost feel something breathing softly near the back of his neck. A cold breath. Min's entire body trembled. Every instinct screamed at him to turn around. To see what was behind him. But he didn't. He kept staring at the doll. Seconds passed. Then suddenly, the scraping stopped. The house fell silent again. Min waited. 1 minute. 2 minutes. Nothing happened. Finally, he let out a shaky breath. See, he murmured. Nothing. And then he blinked. Just once. When his eyes opened again, the chair in front of him was empty. The doll was gone. And somewhere behind him, a child's voice whispered softly. Now you looked away. Chapter 10. The Curse. Min spun around instantly. The whisper still echoed faintly in his ears. Now you looked away. But the living room behind him was empty. The hallway stretched into darkness, quiet and still. The doll was nowhere in sight. Min stood up so quickly that his chair tipped backward and crashed onto the floor. The noise echoed loudly through the house, but no other sound followed. His heart pounded wildly. "Hello?" he called out. No answer. The air inside the house felt colder than ever, as if someone had opened a door to winter. Min began searching the rooms again. Kitchen, bathroom, bedroom, closet. Nothing. The doll had completely vanished. For the first time since everything began, Min felt genuine fear crawl into his bones. This wasn't his imagination. Something was happening. And whatever it wasn't normal. Without wasting another second, Min grabbed his jacket and left the house. There was only one person who might understand what was going on. Mrs. Han. The old woman opened her door slowly when Min knocked. But the moment she saw his pale face, she seemed to understand that something had gone terribly wrong. "It started, didn't it?" she asked quietly. Min swallowed. The doll moved. Mrs. Han closed her eyes for a moment. "I warned you." Min stepped inside quickly. "Please, tell me the truth." The old woman walked slowly to a small wooden table and sat down. Her hands trembled slightly as she poured tea into 2 cups. For a moment she didn't speak. Then finally, she sighed. "That doll is not a toy." Min leaned forward. "What is it?" Mrs. Han's eyes lifted to meet his. "It is a vessel. A vessel that traps the spirit of the child." Min felt a chill run down his spine. "You mean Lin?" The old woman nodded slowly. "When the girl disappeared 3 years ago, the police never found her body. But strange things began happening near that road." Her voice dropped lower. "People started seeing a little girl walking in the rain, always asking the same question." Min felt his stomach twist. "Have you seen my doll?" Mrs. Han nodded again. "Yes. But the truth is, she isn't looking for the doll anymore." Min stared at her. "Then what is she looking for?" The old woman's face turned grim. "A replacement." The word hung heavily in the room. Min's voice trembled. "What do you mean?" Mrs. Han whispered the answer. "The doll holds her spirit. But spirits trapped like that cannot stay forever. They need someone else to take their place." Min felt his blood run cold. "So when someone picks up the doll," the old woman finished the sentence quietly, "the spirit begins to follow them. And when the time comes, she leaves the doll. And the person who found it," her eyes filled with dread, "becomes the next one trapped inside."
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 11. 3:17 a.m. Min left Mrs. Han's house with his mind spinning. The old woman's words followed him like shadows. A replacement. The idea refused to leave his thoughts. If what she said was true, then picking up the doll had already sealed his fate. But Min didn't want to believe it. There had to be another explanation. There had to be a way to end this. By the time he returned home, the sky had grown completely dark again. Thick clouds covered the moon, and the entire neighborhood felt strangely lifeless. Min stepped inside his house cautiously. Every room was silent. The doll still hadn't appeared. For the first time in days, that should have made him feel relieved. Instead, it made the silence even more terrifying. Min locked the door behind him and sat down on the couch in the living room. The clock on the wall ticked loudly in the still air. Tick, tick, tick. The hours passed slowly. Midnight. 1:10 a.m. 2:03 a.m. Min must have drifted into a light sleep without realizing it, because the next thing he knew, something woke him. A sound. Soft. Light. Footsteps. Min's eyes snapped open. The house was dark. Only the faint glow from the streetlights outside illuminated the living room. He held his breath and listened. There it was again. Tap. A small step. Then another. Tap, tap. The sound came from somewhere down the hallway. Min sat up slowly, his heart pounding. The footsteps were too light to belong to an adult. They sounded like the feet of a child running barefoot across wooden floors. The steps moved quickly through the hallway, then stopped. Right outside the living room. Min stared toward the darkness. "Hello?" he whispered. No answer. Then suddenly, a giggle. Soft. Playful. The same childlike laughter he had heard before. Min felt a cold sweat form on his skin. The giggle moved across the room. Left. Right. Behind him. As if someone invisible was running circles around the furniture. Tap 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 tap. The sound grew faster. Closer. Min turned his head desperately, trying to see something in the darkness. But there was nothing. Just empty air. Then the clock on the wall suddenly clicked. Loud. Sharp. Min slowly looked up. The red numbers on the clock glowed faintly in the dark. 3:17 a.m. At that exact moment, the footsteps stopped. The room felt completely silent. Min barely breathed. Then he heard something directly behind him. A tiny whisper. So close it brushed against his ear. "You found my doll?" Min's entire body froze. Slowly, very slowly, he turned his head. Standing in the middle of the living room was the little girl. Her long hair hung wet over her pale face. Her black eyes stared directly at him. And in her small hands, she was holding the doll. Chapter 12. The door opens. Min couldn't breathe. The little girl stood only a few steps away from him in the middle of the living room. The dim light from outside barely touched her figure, but it was enough for Min to see the details that made his blood turn cold. Her white dress was soaked. Water dripped slowly from the ends of her hair onto the wooden floor, forming small dark spots beneath her bare feet. But the most terrifying part was her eyes. They were completely black. Not just dark. Empty. Like two endless holes that swallowed the light around them. Min forced himself to speak. "Lin." The name slipped from his mouth before he could stop it. The girl tilted her head slightly. The movement was slow and unnatural, like a puppet being pulled by invisible strings. For a moment she didn't answer. Then her lips moved. "Yes." The voice that came from her mouth sounded wrong. It was soft like a child's voice, but there was something hollow behind it, like two voices speaking at once. Min's hands trembled. You disappeared 3 years ago." The girl looked down at the doll she was holding. Its tangled blonde hair hung over her small fingers. "I was looking for it," she whispered. Her voice echoed faintly through the quiet room. "My doll." Min swallowed. "You found it on the road?" The girl slowly raised her head again. Her black eyes locked onto him. "I dropped it." A cold wave spread through Min's chest. The girl took a step forward. The floor creaked softly beneath her bare foot. "Mom said not to run ahead." Another step. "But I wanted my doll." Min could barely move. The girl stopped only a few feet away from him. Rainwater continued dripping from her dress, though the air outside was completely dry. "I waited a long time," she said quietly. 3 years. Her small fingers tightened around the doll. But nobody kept it long enough. Min's heart pounded violently. He already knew what she meant. "The people who found it," he whispered. The girl nodded slowly. "They always tried to throw it away." Her expression slowly changed. The faint smile that appeared on her face made the room feel even colder. "But you didn't." Min shook his head weakly. "I didn't know." The girl's smile widened just a little. "That's why you're perfect." The words echoed softly through the house. Before Min could react, the bedroom door behind him slowly creaked open by itself. Creak. Min turned instinctively toward the sound. The darkness inside the bedroom looked deeper than it should have been. When he turned back, the girl was standing directly in front of him. So close he could see the rain sliding down her pale cheeks. She slowly lifted the doll toward him. "You can have it," she whispered. Her black eyes stared into his. "Now, you stay."
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 13. The Truth. Min stared at the doll in the little girl's hands. For a moment, the entire world seemed to stop. The living room was silent except for the slow dripping of water from her dress onto the wooden floor. "You can have it," she had said. The doll was held out toward him now. its glassy black eyes staring upward with that same empty expression. Min's chest tightened. "What happens if I take it?" he asked. The girl tilted her head again. The movement was slow, almost curious. "You already did." Her answer was soft, but it echoed through the room like something far heavier than the words themselves. Min felt his stomach twist. Images rushed through his mind: the road, the rain, the moment he had bent down and picked up the doll, the moment everything had begun. "You've been following me," Min whispered. The girl nodded gently. "I had to." Her voice sounded calm, almost innocent. "The doll holds me." She looked down at it again. "But it cannot hold me forever." Min's breathing grew shallow. "So you need someone else." Another nod. A faint smile appeared on her pale face. "Someone who keeps the doll." Min's mind raced. All those people Mrs. Han mentioned. "They found it," the girl said quietly. "But they always threw it away." Her expression darkened slightly. "They didn't want me." Min felt a chill run through him. "So they died." The girl didn't answer. She simply stared at him. And somehow that silence confirmed everything. Min took a slow step backward. "No," he said. "I'm not taking your place." The girl's smile slowly faded. Her black eyes seemed to grow darker. "But you already started." Min's voice trembled. "What do you mean?" The girl lifted her small hand and pointed at him. "Look." Min hesitated. But slowly he glanced down at his hands. His breath caught. The skin around his fingers looked strange. Paler than before. Almost gray. Like plastic. He rubbed his fingers together nervously. They felt stiff. Cold. "No," Min whispered. The girl stepped closer. Her voice softened again. "You kept the doll. You listened to me. You stayed." Each word felt like a nail driving deeper into his chest. "That means it's almost time." Min looked up at her desperately. "How do I stop this?" For the first time, the girl didn't smile. Instead, her expression became strangely sad. "You can't." Her voice barely rose above a whisper. "Someone always has to hold the doll." The room suddenly felt smaller. The walls darker. Min's fingers stiffened further. Slowly, painfully, he realized something horrifying. His hands no longer felt like his own. And the doll in the girl's arms was beginning to look a little more like him. Chapter 14. The Empty House. Min tried to move. But his body no longer responded the way it should. The stiffness in his fingers had spread up his hands, creeping slowly along his arms like ice, freezing everything it touched. Every movement felt slower, heavier, as if his body was gradually turning into something that was no longer alive. "No," Min whispered. His voice sounded weak, distant. Across the room, the little girl watched him quietly. Her expression had changed again. The sadness was gone. Now she looked calm, almost relieved. "It's almost finished," she said softly. Min shook his head desperately. There has to be another way. But deep inside, he already knew the truth. The curse had started the moment he picked up the doll. Everything after that, the laughter, the footsteps, the dreams, had only been the steps leading to this moment. The moment when the spirit would finally leave, and someone else would take its place. Min tried to step backward. His legs barely moved. The stiffness had already reached his shoulders. His skin felt cold, hard, like plastic. The little girl walked closer. For the first time since he saw her, her footsteps made no sound at all. She stopped in front of him. Very gently, she lifted the doll. The doll's face looked different now. The plastic features seemed to have changed slightly. The eyes, they looked more human, more familiar. Min realized with horror that the doll was beginning to look like him. The same shape of the face, the same dark hair, the same frightened expression. "This is how it works," the girl said quietly. Her small hands carefully placed the doll onto the wooden chair beside them. "The doll keeps the spirit." She looked up at Min. "And when someone takes it, the spirit moves on." Min felt the last warmth leave his chest. His breathing slowed. His vision blurred. The world around him seemed to grow distant, like he was sinking underwater. The little girl stepped back. For a moment, she simply stood there watching him. Then she smiled. A real smile this time. Not the twisted one from before. "Thank you," she whispered. Min tried to speak, but his mouth would no longer move. The stiffness reached his neck. His face. His eyes. The last thing he saw was the little girl slowly walking toward the front door. The door opened by itself. Cool night air drifted into the house. For the first time in 3 years, she was finally free. Behind her, the house became completely silent. And on the wooden chair in the living room, a new doll sat perfectly still, wearing Min's face.
Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.
Chapter 15. The Road in the Rain. 1 week later, the small house at the end of the alley stood completely silent. Neighbors noticed something was strange when they realized Min hadn't been seen for several days. The lights in his house never turned on at night, and the front gate remained closed. Eventually, someone called the police. When the officers arrived, they forced the door open and stepped inside. The house looked normal at first. Nothing appeared broken. Nothing seemed stolen. The furniture was exactly where it should have been. But the air inside the house felt strangely cold. One of the officers walked slowly into the living room. "Hello?" he called out. No answer. The room was empty. Except for one thing. A wooden chair stood beside the sofa. And sitting on it was a doll. The officer frowned slightly and stepped closer. The doll wore a small red shirt and dark pants. Its black hair was short and messy, and its face looked oddly detailed compared to ordinary toys. Almost realistic. The officer leaned down to examine it. Something about the doll's expression made him uncomfortable. Its plastic face looked frightened. Like someone frozen in the moment before something terrible happened. "Kids must have left it here," the other officer said from the hallway. "Maybe." The first officer picked the doll up and placed it on the table. "Let's keep searching." But they never found Min. No body. No signs of a struggle. Nothing. He had simply disappeared. Just like the little girl 3 years earlier. That same evening, heavy rain began to fall again. Miles away from the city, on the same quiet road where Min had once driven home after work. The rain poured onto the empty asphalt. Thunder rolled softly across the dark sky. A car approached slowly through the storm. The driver squinted through the windshield as the headlights illuminated something lying near the side of the road. He frowned, then pressed the brakes. The car stopped. There, half submerged in a shallow puddle, was a doll. It wore a small red shirt and dark pants. Its black hair was messy. Its face looked strangely human. The driver opened the car door and stepped out into the rain. "Someone must have dropped this," he muttered. He bent down and picked it up. The doll felt warm in his hands. Behind him, thunder echoed through the night. And far down the empty road, a small child's laughter could almost be heard again. They never found Min. No body. No trace. No explanation. Only an empty house. And a doll sitting quietly on a wooden chair. Maybe it was just another strange disappearance. Or maybe the doll simply found someone new. So if you ever drive down a lonely road late at night, and you see a doll lying in the rain, don't stop. Don't touch it. And whatever you do, never bring it home. Like and subscribe to Whispering Dark Tales for more chilling ghost stories.